What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about SoundHound. I want to go over some of the data points, break it down on what's really moving it, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. SoundHound is up a very impressive 13.4%, 1190 the low, 1342 the high. So crazy day for SoundHound, and a lot of this is just piggybacking off of yesterday's good momentum. So in case you don't know, yesterday the market was largely pulling back because of Trump's big, beautiful bill. SoundHound was one of the very few stocks that actually was green, and a lot of that had to do with big money rushing into SoundHound. No different than today, you are seeing a lot of volume, so 81.4 million shares being traded, 35.7 is the average. Looking at both the secondary market and also the dark pool, you are seeing a lot of big transactions, 2.07, 1.8, and even just first thing, like there's a lot of big money getting into SoundHound, both through the secondary market and also the dark pool. Dark pool is often enough used by shorts. I'll go over what shorts are doing in a second, but today there isn't anything coming on a macro standpoint that's moving SoundHound, nor is there any official news or any SEC filings. A couple of things I do want to go over though. So even though it wasn't official news, SoundHound did put out a Wall Street Journal article, and this is kind of just talking on how AI is really transforming businesses. And in case you do not know, that's kind of what SoundHound does. And so the last couple PRs from SoundHound that came out on June the 17th and also June the 4th kind of were the same type of mentality. Just the fact that SoundHound is really transforming a lot of different sectors. So even though a lot of these don't really bring up SoundHound, I think in general, investors can kind of read between the lines, and what this does mean is more and more revenue, potential new partnerships, and just further expansion. So I think this, at the end of the day, is really showing to investors what SoundHound can do in the foreseeable future. Just unfortunately, we haven't really seen that much in analyst ratings, so most likely they are waiting for their upcoming earnings, which technically is unannounced right now, but that should really draw more attention to SoundHound. Same goes for that new Daniel Ives ETF. I think that as well will draw a lot of eyes to SoundHound, because even just generally going back over here, SoundHound over the last 5 days is up 13.42%. And you can kind of see just the massive amount of volume getting into SoundHound. One thing I do want to bring up that was posted on Reddit was another article kind of alluding to McDonald's testing SoundHound. So this is something that has been kind of a hot topic for, what was it, 6 months now, a little bit longer than that. Still nothing official. McDonald's is a huge name, so I don't think they would just out there just quickly announce a partnership or that they're going to be doing something unless it is like thoroughly tested. But for whatever reason, and when they do announce that, then SoundHound will really go up significantly. So let me know your general thoughts on this, as well as the Wall Street Journal, for those of you that kind of read it. What's your viewpoint? And then SoundHound was able to kind of piggyback off of this article and just kind of sell themselves a little bit. So on July the 23rd, they're going to be doing a webinar. So this is, in my opinion, pretty good stuff. So stay tuned for that coming out on the 23rd at 2 p.m. Aside from that, though, you have shorts returning 147,000 shares. So still, despite them returning today, it is sitting at the all-time high short interest numbers. So this is why a lot of people right now are calling SoundHound a squeeze play. 33.83% of the free floats being shorted works out to be 122.22 million shares overall are being shorted. DTC is 3.88 days. Higher the number, the higher the magnitude of a squeeze, only because that does factor in SoundHound's average volume in comparison to the number of shares being shorted. So if SoundHound was, for instance, to put out some McDonald's news or something concrete specific to their actual company itself, then you will see most likely a good chunk of shorts returning some shares, because the market is in somewhat FOMO. And even looking forward into the rest of the week, unless Trump puts out something negative associated to tariffs, there's not really much that can slow SoundHound's momentum. So what's your general thoughts on SoundHound in the comments below? And shorts, do you think that's a short squeeze play, or do you think that it's just going to stay at this level for a while now. Moving over to options. So you have 36 million in calls, 3.26 million in puts. 46% of all the options being done are bullish in nature, and that is a very positive change of events. Of course, yesterday was kind of the same type of thing, but moral of the story is big money is still assuming that SoundHound is going to continue to move higher. Based on the bulls, you see a consensus for it to be above that 13 to 1350. Bears are anticipating for it to be sub roughly 12 to 1250. Couple pockets around that 11, but for the most part, it's between 12 and 1250. So given where we are at, there's a lot more upside for SoundHound. So let me know your thoughts on that. Aside from all of that fun stuff with it at 1292, it is trading currently between this pivot and this S1. So I did move over to the 1 week so you can kind of see some very, very strong resistance and support points. So 1574. So that's if you're kind of thinking further out. If you are thinking short term, looking at the 1 day, you pretty much have that 1406 and then 1214 being the next strong support and resistance points. So kind of just take note of all of that. But moving on, like I mentioned, no new analyst ratings. That should come fairly soon in the next probably 3 weeks, I would assume. No actual other articles other than what I did kind of bring up worthwhile to kind of mention. It is just SoundHound's technicals. I think this is one of the biggest things that is really moving it higher. And for those of you, again, that kind of tuned into my weekend video, this super trend indicator right here, that does signal what algorithms are really going to be doing with this stock, whether they're perceiving it as positive or negative, so bullish or bearish. And right now you do have it set as bullish, no different than what happened here. So October leading into pretty much for the most part end of December. So this is giving me the same type of kind of vibes as this. So potentially we could go on a very aggressive run. And one of the biggest things that kickstarted all of this was a massive inflow of capital, no different than what is happening right now. So I think SoundHound is going to have a very nice push higher, because right now at the same time, it is above all the key pivotal moving averages, 50, 100, and 200, and that has not occurred since pretty much that same time in October 2024. So for those of you that are doing options, right now might be a very good time to start looking at some long-term calls. Again, for those of you that are familiar with options, if not, take the time to research and whatever else. Same goes for if you're selling covered calls. I'd personally avoid that, only because if you do feel like a stock is going to move higher, you kind of want to avoid covered calls unless you're doing very far out, but nonetheless, things are looking pretty a-okay. On the stochastic RSI, it is relatively overbought, but as I've signaled over the last week, pretty much everything is overbought right now. So the first sign of weakness, let's say Trump comes out and says, hey, you know what, I'm going to tariff China 100%, that will cause a little bit of extra volatility because, and plus kind of an overreaction. That's what typically does happen when stocks are overbought, and same goes for oversold. So I think in reality, assuming none of that does happen, you're going to see a nice continued push higher. So what's your thoughts on SoundHound? What have you been doing? Have you been buying? Have you been selling? Like, what have you been kind of generally thinking about with SoundHound? I myself, I haven't really done anything with SoundHound, just my last purchase, which was during that crazy pullback right here when I did buy in at $9.28. I'm pretty happy for that and glad I actually committed to that, because prior to kind of buying here, I was selling puts, and so I was just collecting premiums just in case it was going to get to that $8.50 range, as I kind of mentioned to you guys in the past. But let me know your viewpoint on what you've been doing. Do you think that sometime this year or ever they are going to announce a kind of deal and partnership with McDonald's, and what would that do to the stock price? I think just for face value, given the shorts and everything, easily it would be a 60+% green day, if not a lot more than that. So what's your kind of thoughts on that? And one final thing though, pop over to my Patreon. I do give buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. And even just this prior to this weekend. I did change my rating on SoundHound, kind of extended the target a little bit further because I think just the setup for SoundHound going into this week was very bullish, and rightfully so. So let me know your thoughts and pop over to the Patreon in the description below. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.